Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to all of you in our instruction course on pertinent legal aspects of ophthalmic practice. Let me introduce my esteemed co-instructors, Dr. Ajay Pal, the prolific surgeon with the immense experience of running a center successfully over many years. Dr. Purban Ganguly, the vibrant young surgeon with excellent management skills. Dr. Rupak Kanti Biswas, with God-gifted surgical and communication skill, leading 2 major eye care centers in Kolkata. Dr. Sumana Chatterjee, having some first-hand experience in NABH accreditation process. Dr. Suprakash Rai, the compassionate and skillful surgeon with a successful career in ophthalmic practice. We have chosen this topic as violence against doctors has become rampant nowadays. Before going to our own slides, we want to share a video. Just watch the video, then we'll go the next slides.
एक लड़की की मौत के बाद परिवार के लोगों ने जमकर तोड़फोड़ की। करीब 100 लोगों की भीड़ ने अस्पताल के स्टाफ के साथ मारपीट की और काफी देर तक हंगामा करता।
With this background, I invite my first co-instructor, Dr. Ajay Pal, to give us tips on how to protect our centers from litigations.
Is my slide visible?
No.
No.
Slide is not visible.
Opened it.
Did not come.
Dr. Ajay, you're visible. Please go ahead. Start sharing your screen.
You start sharing, sir.
No, I have shared. I have opened it. It's open. I am again opening my. 1 second. Just give me a second.
Good.
No problem. Take your time. No problem at all.
How come it's not coming?
Take your time. It's totally fine. We all are getting used to this new virtual world. All right. And there you are. We can see your screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has the slide opened?
No. You open it, sir?
Click on it.
I have opened it.
Click. No, you click on it again.
I mean, my slide, my screen is coming. Can the
there may be some Ajoy to kore obhyasto. I think there may be some technique. Can you just put it again?
I'm doing again stop share.
Unshare and share.
Yeah, I'm closing my presentation.
Yeah, close the entire file and then open it again.
Yeah. Again.
Just start the screen share as well.
No, I'm just opening my PowerPoint, and again I'm reducing it down.
प्रसाद सर,
Yes.
प्रसाद सर, उनका जो सिस्टम है वो एक्सचेंज मोड में है. विंडो P दबा करके दबाएंगे तो विंडो के साथ P दबाएंगे तो डुप्लीकेट आएगा. डुप्लीकेट करेंगे तब होगा.
Yeah, tell me what is it?
ओम को एक बार रिपीट कर दोगे जो बोला आपने, जोर से थोड़ा.
उनके कंप्यूटर पे विंडो दबा करके P दबाएंगे.
क्या दबा के?
विंडो का एक बटन होगा नीचे. हाँ. विंडो और P दोनों साथ में दबाइए.
हाँ, विंडो को दबा करके P दबा करके छोड़ दीजिए तो डुप्लीकेट का वो आएगा.
विंडो कहाँ है?
फिर वो फंक्शन और ऑल्ट के बीच ना विंडो का फोटो आता है.
स्पेस बार के साइड में ऑप्शन है.
हाँ.
And those 4 squares तो हाँ
उसको दबा करके P दबाइए.
विंडो और P दोनों को एक साथ दबाइए.
विंडो को दबा करके P दबाइए. देखिए आ गया.
हाँ, वहाँ PC only duplicate extend और second screen.
डुप्लीकेट पे कीजिए. डुप्लीकेट पे.
हाँ.
अब ओपन कीजिए. हाँ, अब शेयर कीजिए और ओपन कीजिए.
अब मैं छोड़ को उसको शेयर कर दूं फिर से.
हाँ, शेयर कीजिए और ओपन कीजिए अपना फाइल.
Is it open?
नहीं, अब
it is not opened in my.
हाँ, तो फिर वही वाला रिपीट कीजिए. आप विंडो के साथ P दबा कर डुप्लीकेट कीजिए.
अभी विंडो वाला करके P दबाएं. P
पर
डुप्लीकेट.
हाँ, डुप्लीकेट पे कीजिए.
अभी क्या करें?
डुप्लीकेट पे है.
हाँ, डुप्लीकेट में दिए तो
यहाँ पे शो नहीं कर रहा.
मैं फिर से स्टॉप शेयर कर रहा हूँ. स्टॉप शेयरिंग.
सर अपना अभी जो है ना शेयर करने से पहले ओपन कर लीजिए आप पावर.
हाँ, मैं तो ओपन किया हूँ. एक सेकंड.
जो शेयर ऑप्शन आएगा उसमें बहुत सारी विंडो दिखेगी.
Dr. Ajay, we'll come back to you. We'll start with you. We'll solve your technical error. I'll just get connected on phone with you. Till then, may I request Jayanta to please go with our next speaker.
Okay. So now I am inviting Dr. Purban Ganguly to learn how to handle the companies we have to deal with.
Good evening.
Procuring the instruments. Dr. Purban, please.
Thank you. Unless Ajay sir has stopped sharing the screen, I cannot share my screen.
I would request Ajay sir to please stop sharing his screen.
Stop sharing, yeah.
I think Ajay, you have already shared, no? Initially, you have already shared. I have seen your screen.
Purban, go ahead. The next, I would request next speaker to please start sharing. Yes, we can see. Please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll be speaking on the draconian deal, how to deal with the cunning companies. Actually, one clarification, none of the companies are cunning. It is just a way to, what should be the way of interacting when we are procuring or purchasing an instrument. So warm regards from RIO Kolkata. There are two basic ways of procuring any instrument, either through a tender process or without a tender process. With the tender process is usually followed in government institutions and big institutions where, there are a lot of legal issues in procuring instrument. If it is without a tender process, like the small hospitals or privately owned hospitals are procuring an instrument or a drug, we usually directly give a purchase order to the company and we procure it. And if it is with a tender process, then we have to have a tender committee. The tender committee will give something called notice inviting the tender with the technical verification, technical specification for the instrument to be procured. And there has to be an expert committee, and the expert committee has to verify the technical specifications in the instrument itself. And lastly, the purchase order comes out. So where is the tender dilemma? The NIT, the notice inviting the tender document, is the key document which needs careful preparation and hopefully with legal help. The technical specifications that we are mentioning in the notice inviting tender of the particular instrument or the drug has to be non-ambiguous and specific, and it should not be biased on any particular company. The third important thing is, in case of any legal dispute, it has to be done. It has to be dealt with in the local court where the hospital is situated. Otherwise, we have to keep running from pillar to post to get a justice. Fourth important thing is, it has to be mentioned that the tender process can be cancelled at any point without showing any reason to the bidders. Fifth important thing is, we have to make sure that if there is, in the first tender, if we have got less than 3 bidders, then that instrument cannot be procured. But for re-tender process, where we are tendering again, when we have not found 3 bidders, then less than 3 bidders we can accept. That is the government rule. And the very important thing is, your entire effort of the tender process will fail if you have not included this clause in your notice inviting tender, that if the L1, that is the lowest bidder, fails due to any reason, due to lack of technical verification, or expert committee has disqualified, or the bidder has failed to provide the instrument, or anything, then the second bidder, the second lowest bidder, will become automatically eligible. Otherwise, the entire tender process will fail. The tender committee prepares the notice inviting tender and the technical specification. Then the technical specifications have to be verified. This is the very important thing. Well, whether all the licenses are there with the company, whether the vendor is qualified to sell that particular instrument, and whether the instrument that the vendor is providing has got all the technical specifications that the manufacturer has claimed in the instrument. Then there will be an expert committee. The expert committee will review, and ultimately there will be financial bid opening. There is selection of the lowest bidder, and after selection of the lowest bidder, the pay order will be released. Unless there is a pay order being released, neither the hospital is allowed to hand over the instrument, neither the company should hand over the instrument to the hospital. Now, before you have issued the pay order, now then something very important comes along, a purchase contract document. A purchase contract document is that particular document which the vendor will hand over to the hospital, that will have all the details of the terms and conditions that has been mutually agreed upon between the hospital and the vendor. And the purchase equipment has to be evaluated from 3 different angles: the technical angle, the clinical angle, and the financial angle. It is very important to have a team consisting of a management personnel from the hospital, a team from the medical personnel from the hospital, and an HR personnel from the hospital to verify that whether the purchased document has got all the verification of the accessories, the manuals, that how the instrument has to be made functioning, the electrical safety, and other things. The installation and the commissioning are needed from the suppliers, but in-house technical staff should monitor the process, as I have mentioned. Now, where can we go wrong in installing the instrument? There can be substandard instrument. The consumables of the instrument may not be customized. The warranty or the guarantee, that is the continuous maintenance contract or the annual maintenance contract, may not be honored by the company. The company is not giving on-site repairs. Every time you are telling that this part is not functioning, he is telling you, okay, we have to send it to Germany, we have to send it to Switzerland, we have to send it to all sorts of places, and that will take months, and the machine will remain non-functional in the hospital. Charging for spare parts. So that is why the purchase document has to be verified very minutely, whether for which parts you are supposed to pay during the guarantee period and for which parts you are not supposed to pay. And there are other technical, electrical, and electronic malfunctions. There may be direct damage due to equipment failure. The equipment is not functioning. Then the software that has been provided is old or is not functioning properly, and the consumables are not as it is expected. Now, if these failures are happening, then what can we do? We can have a written communication with the company. First step is to write to the company that this is where I have found you have not honored the purchase document. Then wait for the communication. If you are not satisfied with the communication, then send a legal notice. You can file if the legal notice is not replied upon or not replied satisfactorily, you can go to file a consumer case in the consumer forum. If there is a damage to the patient due to the instrument, you can even file a criminal case. You can also file a breach of trust with the purchase document. And you can always spread news on the social platform, but you have to be very careful before doing anything on the social platform, because if your claims are not supported by appropriate documents, it can backfire on you. Now, who is potentially liable for defective medicinal products? Primary responsibility lies with the manufacturer or the importer of the product. But if the defect has arisen due to defective storage of the medicinal product or defective transportation or the distribution process, then the vendor or the relevant person or the company, the middle company who is responsible for that can also be made liable. Now, what is liability? Where can you, how much can you claim, or how much is the person or the company liable? If there is if there is a negligence or a breach of contract or a deficiency of service or a breach of conditions of the license, how can a product liability claim be brought? How can you claim the liability? See, for a criminal case, there is no limitation of period between the incidents that has occurred and the claim. But for civil claims, it is usually 3 years. And for consumer court claims, it is usually 2 years. Where can we go if you want to claim a liability? First is if you have found that a particular drug is not appropriate or it has caused any kind of adverse reaction in your patients, first you have to send it to the analysis to a government lab. The second thing, with that report of the government lab, we have to go and file a complaint with the DCGI, Drug Controller General of India, or the Drug Authority. We can also go to a consumer forum, because the hospital is the consumer in this case and the vendor or the manufacturer is the provider. So we can always go to a consumer forum, and we can also go to the court. The Consumer Protection Act clearly provides instances in which the product manufacturer, product seller, or the service provider would be held liable in cases of defective goods and or deficiency of services. Now, what are the remedies that the consumers have been provided under the Consumer Protection Act? You can get a replacement of the whole instrument or the whole batch of the drug, or a part that is defective in the instrument, or a part of the drug dispatch that is found to be defective. You can have a refund of the price of the goods, the entire instrument or the drug fund can be refunded. You can you have to pay. There can be the compensation being claimed for loss of injury or any kind of defect that has been done to the patient due to the drug. The entire that particular genre of the drug can be withdrawn from sale. The manufacturer can be told to cease production of the good. You can also claim a sum for the legal costs that the hospital has spent to against the manufacturer or the vendor to have that particular claim. Now, what precautions can we take? Better to buy insurance for the equipment purchase, because if we have the insurance for the equipment purchase, the insurance company will help us in these sort of claims. Now, the thing that I have mentioned previously, we should not, without a pay order, neither the company should give us the instrument, nor the hospital should claim to have a delivery of the instrument, and it better not to deal with cash. And obviously, there is no point shying out our expenditure of the hospital in terms of procuring drugs and instruments from the government authorities, especially the tax department. So I would end by saying that buying is an art. Don't think that the companies are there to, misutilize ourselves. But as a buyer, we have to be wise, we have to be cautious, we have to be unbiased, and we have to be honest. Thank you so much.
Great talk, Purvan. May I invite Dr. Ajay Pal? It's okay.
Dr. Ajay, could you try and share the screen once again? I will see this time if it works. Hopefully, the internet god will help us. Anyway, thank you so much, Dr. Ganguly, for a great session.
Thank you.
Is my screen seen?
No, sir. I'm so sorry, Dr. Ajay, but we can't see your screen. So what will we do?
Sir,
Dr. Jayant,
Ajay said there is one more option. If you can send your PPT to some of us, we can share it for you, and you just have to keep telling us to change the slide, when to change the slide.
WhatsApp, एक second. Doctor Sahab.
All right, we'll communicate on that. Dr. Ajay, I'll call you on that. We'll quickly sort that, but I would request Dr. Jayanta just to keep the conference on time. I would request Dr. Jayanta to please continue with your talk. So, okay. Ajay, Dr. Ajay, I'm calling you right away.
Okay.
I think I'll rejoin again later on. I'm sending the mail. Joyanto, can you just send me the mail in the group and I'll just mail it.
Hello.
Thank you.
Dr. Ajay, I'm contacting you. We'll sort this out. Okay. Dr. Jayanta, till then you can please continue with your session.
Now let me discuss few points on the basis of my practical experience, how to deal with or how to avoid CPA.
Dr. Jayanta, do you have any presentation? If you could start sharing your screen. Thank you.
So nowadays, corporatization and commercialization of medical profession occurs against the spirit of the Hippocratic Oath.
Yeah.
Doctors are no longer regarded as infallible and beyond questioning.
Can you send me the...
A well-published malpractice case can ruin the doctor's career and practice. The best way to handle medical legal issues is by preventing them. Mute. Is it audible?
Yes, yes. Jantu, you can
it listen. Is audible, no?
Yes, yes.
Okay, it's audible. Now, negligence by doctors has to be determined by judges. Very interesting, who are not trained in medical sciences. The level of negligence depends on the entire context of the place, the time, the individuals involved, and the level of complications. Error in judgment is not negligence if it is recognized promptly and remedial actions taken. But failure to do so tantamount to negligence. Whether to undertake the case, what treatment to give, and administration of that treatment is the duty to the patients. A breach of any of these duties gives a right of action for negligence of the patient. A victim can seek any of the following actions against a negligent medical profession. Compensatory action first, that means seeking monetary compensation before the civil court, high court, or the consumer dispute redressal forum. Second, punitive action, means filing a criminal complaint against a doctor under the IPC. Third, disciplinary action, moving the professional bodies like Indian Medical Council or State Medical Council. And fourth, recommendatory actions, lodging complaint before the National or Human Rights Commission seeking compensation. So what are the common errors by medical professionals? Patients use because they feeling that they are not heard, that their needs were not attended and that nobody seemed to care. And as a result, a bad outcome resulted due to a mistake or negligence. So, communicate clearly and effectively. Ensure your patient understands their diagnosis, treatment, and medication plans. If a certain complication is a known risk, it should be on the consent form for the medical procedure. However, the consent form need not list every single complication that has ever occurred for that procedure. Be aware of all medications that patient is taking, including over-the-counter drugs and alternative medicines. If patients feel any medication is not having its intended effect, they should immediately contact their physician. It is better to avoid handwritten prescriptions. Again, inadequate follow-up. Patients do not follow through with tests as directed. So needing better follow-up involves referral to specialists. And every step has to be documented not only to prevent medico-legal issues, but also for good patient care as well. So how to prevent? Again, it is important to let the patient and their caregivers to know that as a treating doctor, their problems are understood. Spend time allowing the patient to fully explain his or her concern determines the physician's ability to show concern, empathy, and likability. The longer the quality time a physician spends with the patient, less likely will that physician be sued. Always to do the best. A treating doctor should not let fatigue or anything else gets in the way of doing his work. And when physicians are honest about medical errors and apologize to the patient, the overall cost of medical malpractice is reduced in the end. Another important thing is don't blame others. One should refrain from blaming other healthcare providers for adverse outcomes. Always follow clinical guidelines systematically developed nationally and globally to assist clinical decision making. That is, practice of evidence-based medicine. Physicians need to stay up to date with the latest continued medical education program, all India conferences, workshops, and symposia. Often patient may discuss what is in the social media. The ability to discuss about those news with your patients will reinforce their confidence. So the failure to obtain informed consent can be a form of medical negligence. Informed consent and documentation is very important. Mention about all the risk, complication, alternatives, and what happens if no treatment is done in an informed consent must be done. Accurately and completely record the care given to patient as well their response to that care. Documentation has legal credibility when it is accurate, truthful, and appropriate. In surgical protocols, detailed notes of operation. Second, always sign along with your one nurse in prescribed format for every operations. During surgery, if find something unexpected, it is advisable to explain your plans to the patient party before proceeding further, and always check pre-anesthesia assessment records. Correcting medical records is permissible, but fabricating or manipulating is both illegal and unethical. And if found by court, the consequences are disastrous as the doctor loses all sympathies of the court. If the physician follows hospital policy regarding treatment protocols, they are less likely to get into trouble. There are two types of indemnity. One, personal, which takes care of the risk of liability of the doctor, and second, omission policy covers both institution along with its staff members. Not everyone who sues has a case. In case of medical negligence, the patient must establish her or his claim against the doctor. A doctor can be held liable for negligence only if one can prove that she or he is guilty of a failure. No doctor with ordinary skills would be guilty if acting with reasonable care. A doctor should not ignore any allegation in any form, oral or written, and should be able to handle allegation with clear and firmness in an intelligent and sympathetic manner. A doctor cannot become a victim of malicious or defamatory reporting. A doctor should not be silent and should rebut the allegation. The doctor can take help of their professional association to convey the facts and support to resist a trial by media. It has no right to present the facts of a case in an unfair and prejudicial manner. A verdict. The Supreme Court has warned the police officials not to arrest or harass doctors unless the facts clearly come within the parameters laid down in a case. While in the midst of a malpractice case, one needs to stay focused on other areas of your life. Obsessing over the case should be avoided. The medical malpractice stress syndrome is a real one. So at the end, practice is like driving through an accident-prone highway. Make sure that there is a competent driver. Ignition is working fine. Engine oil and fuels are enough for the journey. GPS setup is done, and last but most important, brakes. Know when to stop. Working fine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jayanta. That was a really, really great session, and we highly appreciate your efforts on keeping it on time. All right, for the next talk, with the permission of our chairperson, I would like to invite Dr. Rupak Kanti Biswas, and the topic is the battle for integrity, facing the physical, mental, and social media harassment. Over to you, Dr. Rupak Kanti. May I request you to please unmute yourself and start sharing your screen. Thank you.
first of all, I would like to, thank you, Dr. Jayanta, for including me into this, most important topic. So we are into the academic. We do understand, but at the same time, being a professional, we need to, be on our toes to save our professional career as well. So the academic and the profession should, go hand by hand, and it should be balanced way of handling it. The person who can balance it is the best way of surviving rather than in this tough world. So I would like to share my, presentation. Is it visible now?
Yes, doctor, it's visible. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So I will be, talking briefly about the battle for our integrity and how we are facing the physical, mental, social harassment, and how to handle it. So, the aim of this presentation is almost every doctor is worried about the violence at the workplace, but very few doctors are trained to avoid it or deal with such a situation. This is very, though it is seems to be a little harsh, but yes, this is the ground reality. So we are not actually trained to prepare it up, and there is no proper curriculum to train us. So I thank Dr. Jayanta once again for bringing us this kind of opportunity. The fact is that the IMA has accepted that almost up to near about 3/4 or 75% of the doctor has faced some kind of a violence at their work in their lifetime. So which is a significant number in a fraternity. I don't think that any other profession has like this kind of profession related exposure to the risk. Very few profession maybe. So the nature of violence can be of telephonic threat, intimidation, verbal abuse, physical harassment, which may be non-injurious, or maybe a simple injury to the grievous injury. Even it can go to murder level, or the vandalism and arson. So I think everyone is aware of these facts, because on everyday practice we are coming across. So probably this COVID situation, we are a little better in a situation, but again, I'm sure in pre-COVID, everyone, once you open your newspaper, there must be one or two news in everyday's news. So this leads to lot of psychosocial effect of that violence. If it is happening to that medical profession person, it can be doctor, it can be a paramedical staff, it can be nurses, it can be your any supporting staff. So they usually go into a depression, insomnia, post-traumatic stress, fear, anxiety, leading to absenteeism. And believe me, I know one of the leading ophthalmologists in India had to leave his practice slowly when he was in his peak time. So this is how a person's career can get completely demolished after facing this kind of harassment. And this is very difficult for us to accept the fact. So we need to understand how to prevent it and how to handle it. So the cause of violence, let us go from the root. Let us understand the cause of violence. That involves a lot of factors. It involves the policy factor. It involves the other factors as well. So unfortunately, Indian healthcare system. So let us discuss about how Indian healthcare system runs. It has near about closely 2% of the total budget is only fixed for the healthcare, which is nothing. And India government share into that healthcare system delivery is around 20%. So the 80% is being done by the private sector, of which the majority of those is being handled by the small hospitals who are having 30 beds or less than 30 beds, this group of hospitals. So this data we are giving from the Ministry of Health and Government of India. So that due to this poor, and at the same time, the poor insurance penetration, which is little better now, but again, In periphery, there is, I'm sure there is, the insurance penetration is much less, and so they have to spend their money from their own pocket. The patient has to spend their money, and once you have spent their money and the outcome is little bit away from what they are looking for, then the mismatch starts, and the disruption starts, and from there the violence starts. So this is again actually different policy which is leading to this. And majority of them, as we told you, the smaller hospitals are supporting the most of the healthcare system, but they don't have the proper infrastructure of the security system or the whole support system rather. So they are the most vulnerable area, and which usually the people they target to them only. Social factor. So this is again a bare truth that in India, the literacy rate is not that high. And because of that, as you know, the unrealistic expectation, and which actually they are paying for that money. So so they understand that we are paying so much amount of the money, so I should get the optimum result. So once they are not getting that optimum result due to any reason, it may not be the fault of the doctor, which is in majority of the cases is not there, but the doctor is or the hospital personnel are the responsible for that. And we cannot ignore the professional factor as well. As a part of the medical curriculum, all the doctors taught about the clinical behavior, but never we are taught about the empathy. I think Dr. Jayanto was talking about this empathy. So this is one of the important part of the treatment, which actually can soothe a lot of hurdles and heartburns. As a part of the medical curriculum, so in clinical practice, so effective patient-doctor communication is also important. So I think these are the things that has already been covered by Dr. Jayanto very nicely. So the communication is the most important one of the part. With empathy, if you put the communication properly and if you can document it, I think that solves the majority of these, a lot of nuisances. The professional factor involves the, receiving an explanation of the occurrence of symptoms and signs. And during this course of treatment, we should discuss all those things, or at the beginning, the expenditure and the unmet expectation, which you are, forcing to some extent. So there is an urgent need for improvement of the communication between patient and doctor. This is one of the most important part. And I mean, even if it is I'll give you a small gesture kind of thing. So once some patient comes to you with a very irritated and agitated way, why doctor, this thing has not happened, I was told like this. The first thing is that if you ask them to sit in front of your chair, let us sit here. You can offer a cup of tea. That, immediately melts down a lot of, anguish into them. So the doctor's gesture, the communication, and the way you handle it is the most, important here. Obviously, some local factors which is not in your control, some local bodies, politicians, and mob mentality, they are, prone to create like this kind of, inciting for the violence. But almost lack of security in this, government hospitals also is in the primary health center is one of the most important factors, that the people are a little bit of moving their face away from those peripheral community health service, but which is have a tremendous effect on our healthcare system. So we need to look into it. Our bureaucrats, our decision, our policymakers should look into it, so that you need to give them the protection from the undue situation. Can I request Dr. Jayanto, can I get a few more time, please?
Definitely.
Yeah. So the prevention of violence against doctor is rising due to the rates of violence of the doctors is reluctant to take up a serious case. So as you know, and this ultimately leading to what is a compromisation of the healthcare system. So unless and until you prevent it, you handle it with proper care, and then you protect your proper, yes, if it has to be, the mob cannot decide whether the doctor is guilty or not. There is a right forum for that to decide whether the doctor is guilty or not. So we need to control that mob in that particular situation so that if the doctor or the health person is guilty, there are ample of laws are there which they can be punished. But yes, we need to handle at that point of time, which in majority of the cases, even without any fault of also doctors are victimized. The media, responsibility of the media. I think this is one of the most important things. But again, we are scared to talk about it. The practice of the media, the practice of the medicine is not a very black and white thing. You need to understand that you are dealing with a human system, which can go wrong in any point of time. So the diagnosis is important, but diagnosis of diagnosis is a hypothetically deductive process. But even if the right diagnosis, also there are a lot of other factors which can lead to worsening of the condition. So doctors cannot be held responsible or accountable for every death or any worsening of the situation or any kind of unwanted situation. I would like to re-emphasize here that one of the, I think you all remember one of the pediatric NICU incidents which occurs in Gorakhpur in UP. Actually, this is lack of oxygen was there, and the entire blame goes to that doctor. So how did we are responsible? How did that doctor is responsible for supplying of the oxygen? So like this is an example I'm giving to you. So the media responsibility is also very important. But the responsibility of a doctor is equally important, is that you have to follow some of the cardinal rules. So, you do not overreach. You do not treat beyond the scope of anyone's training and the facility which is available, which actually prevents a lot of violence and the litigation also. We ensure that a valid and informed consent is taken properly and is not just considered as a formality. This is one of the most important part of it. The audio-visual recording. It helps as a proof. It helps for the self-improvement of that person also. If you record it and if you go there and reassess the condition, you can improve your counseling part of it. And the most important is for the training program. A senior person of that hospital, a senior doctor, the counseling by the senior doctor can give an example to the junior doctors. And by that way, this is also can come into the part of the training system. So extra effort should be taken.
Sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Rupak, but with all due respect, may I request you to please sum it up in next 30 seconds, because all speakers are waiting and they are delayed. I'm just done. So to sum up the whole thing, is there is a responsibility for the institution as well is there. So if the mob control and a proper security system has to be there, which can come in between, between the mob and the doctor or the health personnel at the initial stage. And by that way, you can dilute the situation to some extent till the police intervenes it. Now, the social media harassment, how much protection we get from the law. So the law is persisting since 2000, and this is section IPC, information technology of section 67. So you can just go through. There may be a 3 years or 5 years of 5 lakhs of, fine, which can go up to 5 years or 10 lakhs. This is an important notice by Kolkata Gazette from government of West Bengal. I'm just giving an example of that, and you can share. You can ask me for this thing. And the new weapon which is available right now for the IT Information Act from 25th February 2021, in presence of Ministry of Information Broadcasting and the Electronics and IT Media, they have given this protection for those who are doing this kind of civil defamation in the social media can be punished. Thank you. This is in brief about how to go about it. So I think we'll go for the question and answer session. Dr. Jayanta.
Thanks, Dr. Rupak, for your excellent talk. Now I will invite Dr. Sumona Chatterjee to share her thoughts on hospital accreditation.
Dr. Sumona, may I request you to please unmute yourself?
Yeah, I think I am unmuted, no?
Okay, we can hear you now. Yes.
Yeah. So can you see my screen?
Yes, please go ahead and present your talk.
Right. So after this excellent talk by Dr. Rupakante Biswas, my topic is whether having an accreditation status is protective in the court of law or not. So first, let us see what is a NABH, which is this is not only one accreditation center, but this is obviously the most popular one. It is a constituent board of Quality Council of India. It is set up to establish and operate accreditation program for healthcare organization. The board is structured to cater to much desired needs of the consumers and to set benchmarks for progress of health industry. The benefits of having an accreditation for your center is that it stimulates continuous improvement, commitment to quality care and patient safety, ensuring best clinical outcomes, raises community confidence among the patients as the services are provided by credentiated staff, provides marketing advantage in a competitive healthcare, and provides an objective system of empanelment by insurance and other third parties. Most of us are doing the accreditation for this last factor only. So what an accreditation process contains? It makes sure that every center has a policy and procedure on their scope of services, their registration, admission, transfer, and referral of patients, patient initial assessment, regular reassessment, policies regarding their laboratory services and imaging services, whether in-house or outsourced, safety program, and discharge protocol. They ensure that every center takes care of its patients, the uniform care, the emergency service, care of the patients requiring anesthesia, as well as surgery. There are some indicators that one center has to decide to have a continuous quality improvement. We need to have these indicators to reduce, report, and control any sorts of sentinel events, non-conformance, near miss, or hazardous condition. So effective risk management policy and root cause analysis has to be there. And it also sees that the center enforces corrective action and preventive action if any of these things happen. The most important hospital infection control protocol, it says whether the center gives periodical training to all staffs about infection control protocols and policies. It has to have established SOPs for infection control practices, policies and protocols on the method of disinfection and sterilization, maintain and implement biomedical waste management protocols, regular monitoring of engineering department and water supply system, supervision of biomedical waste management activities. Also about the facility management and safety, NABH does provide some guidelines. The organization's environment and facilities operate to ensure safety of patients, their families, staff, and visitors. The organization should have a program for clinical and support service equipment management. The organization has provisions for safe water, electricity, medical gas, and vacuum system. And the organization has plans for fire and non-fire emergency within the facilities. About the human resource management, the center has to recruit competent people with a positive attitude towards organization and customers. So employees are selected, trained, promoted on the basis of their relevant skills and performance without any discrimination, and motivate them through reward system to provide a clean, safe, healthy, professional, and enjoyable working environment for all the staffs. NABH also have some policies regarding the information management system. There has to be proper protocols on management, storing, and retrieving the data. Medical records should have unique identifier, authorized entries, and reflecting the continuity of care. Foolproof discharge summary is very, very important. Maintaining the confidentiality, integrity, and security of information is given highest credential. The management of medication, the part where maximum errors occur. There should be the policy for storage and safe dispensing of medication, monitoring of adverse drug events, and how to have a proper prescription with patient's ID number, name and date, age and weight in case of the pediatric patients, generic name of medicine and strength or concentration of drug, doses regime, directions for use, prescriber's signature, name, time, and date has to be mentioned. Also, it takes care of the patient's right and education. We have to have a signage to tell about the rights of the patients and their family members, their responsibilities, and to keep patients' information as confidential and to protect them from physical abuse or neglect. It also defines the responsibility of management. So the management has to ensure that the organization is managed in an ethical manner and to define the responsibilities of multidisciplinary committees to supervise all the previous headlines for overseeing specific aspects of quality and patient safety. So to summarize, NABH doesn't give you extra protection in the court of law. But if one is accredited, it helps to establish one's credibility, as it becomes evident that all regulations are followed, and that's why you are accredited with a body like NABH. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chatterjee. Now, I request Dr. Ajoy Pal sir, whether its slides are okay or. Then Dr. Suprakash Rai will discuss how to protect our patients' rights also.
Just give me just few minutes to prepare my.
Dr. Suprakash, are you there?
Yeah, yes, I'm here. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Yes.
Your screen is also visible. Please go ahead.
Okay. I'm just sharing my screen. Please keep this. My slides are visible?
Yes.
Okay. Very good afternoon. After excellent presentation of previous speakers, my topic is on protection of patients' rights. Both Dr. Jayanto and Dr. Sumana already covered various aspects. Thanks to AIOC and Dr. Jayanto for giving me this opportunity. First of all, we should know why patients' rights are so important. Awareness on patients' rights by healthcare providers positively influences patient satisfaction. Lack of its observance erodes trust between the two and endanger the life and safety of both, ultimately culminating to more and more violences that we often see. Then what is Charter of Patients' Right? A patient is entitled to a certain amount of protection to be ensured by physicians, healthcare providers, and the state, which have been codified in various societies and countries in the form of Charters of Patients' Right. In India, it has been proposed by Central Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and to be implemented by a state government. What are the legal documents on patients' rights? In India, there is the Constitution of India, Article 21, Indian Medical Council Regulation, the Consumer Protection Act, Drugs and Cosmetic Act, Clinical Establishment Act 2010, etc. Why there is a need for this draft? This document will act as an operational mechanism to make these rights functional and enforceable by law. This charter is to generate widespread public awareness and educate citizens what they should expect from healthcare system. India presently does not have a dedicated regulator as other countries, but some states have adopted the National Clinical Establishment Act 2010. The charter has defined 17 rights of the patient. What are those rights? First of all, the right to emergency medical care and non-discrimination. As per Supreme Court, all hospitals, both private and government, are bound to provide emergency medical care, and such care should be initiated without demanding any payment, and basic care to be provided irrespective of paying capacity of the patient. Any discrimination on the basis of the patient's illness, their disease status, religion, caste, ethnicity, gender, age, language, or their social origin is a clear violation of law. Every patient has the right to adequate information regarding their nature and cause of illness, provisional and if possible confirmed diagnosis, investigation necessary for the disease, plan of management, and complications may arise during the process of their treatment. Professional status of all healthcare providers should be informed them. This is already explained by Dr. Jayanto, that informed consent is very much important, and we can't approach to any potentially hazardous procedure like in our ophthalmology, DFA, laser, or any surgical intervention without giving any written informed consent. And consent must be given by patient or its caregivers. Right to confidentiality, human dignity, and privacy. Doctors have a duty to hold information about patients' health condition and treatment plans in strict confidentiality, unless it is essential for public health interest, like in case of communicable diseases. Right to protection of their privacy during physical examination, such as on female attendant, must be there during examination of female patients by male doctors. Right to records, reports, and transparency. All patients and their caregiver can access original or copies of case papers, indoor patient records, and investigation reports within 24 hours of admission and 72 hours of discharge. And this should be made available after paying appropriate fees for photocopy. Information on rates and services should be available, every detail as a prominent display and in a brochure. Display must be at a conspicuous place and bilingual. Patients should be given itemized bill at the time of payment. Patient and their caregivers can choose any registered pharmacy for purchasing their medicines. Similarly, for diagnostic and laboratory tests, they can choose any laboratory having qualified personnel and accredited by NABL. Right to seek opinion or choose alternative treatment. Every patient has the right to seek second opinion from clinicians of their choice. The management should provide necessary records and information without any extra cost for that purpose. Patient can choose between alternative treatment and management options if available. Considering all aspects, patient can refuse the treatment with their own responsibility. Right to proper referral, transfer, and take discharge. Patient has a right to continuity of care and the right to be duly registered at first healthcare facility as well as at any subsequent facilities where care is sought. Patient's discharge cannot be detained on procedural grounds, which includes non-payment, dispute on payment of hospital charges, not consented previously by the patient and their caregivers. Similarly, body of the deceased cannot be detained on the same ground. Right to protection of patients involved in clinical trial and protection of participants involved in biomedical and health research. All clinical trials must be conducted in compliance with the protocols and good clinical practice guidelines. Every patient who is approached to participate has the right to due protection. Every patient taking part in biomedical research shall be referred to as research participant. Research participants should follow the national ethical guidelines for biomedical and health research. Right to safety and quality care according to standards. Healthcare providers should ensure safe and secure hospital premises for the patient and their caregivers. And care should be provided with adequate cleanliness and proper infection control measures. Also, they should ensure adequate sanitation facilities and safe drinking water provision as per standards. Patients must be educated on their health condition and healthy living practices. Responsibilities towards healthcare system, health insurance scheme which are relevant and officially supported, relevant entitlements in case of charitable hospitals, how to seek redressal in the language of the patient. Right to seek redressal and to be heard. Every patient or caregivers are entitled to give feedback or lodge complaints about the care they receive from hospital or doctors. In such case, information should be given on how to give feedback in a simple and user-friendly manner. Then why we can't implement such rights? Most of the time it is lack of our adequate knowledge on patients' rights, lack of standards and strategies to improve implementation of these rights, pseudo sense of being protected by professional indemnity, attitude and behavior of healthcare providers, excess patient load leading to less interaction time with the patients, pressure of corporate policymakers. So now the key areas of patient's bills of right. Respect and attitude towards the patient and their caregiver. It's the most important aspect. And giving more time of interaction in our field, particularly in cases of glaucoma patients and patients posted for complicated surgical cases and patients when there is multiple intravitreal injection, costly injections are necessary. Those patients must be interacted thoroughly. Otherwise, later on, they may be dissatisfied. Detailing of treatment plans, transparency on rate and services, timely referral, access to emergency services, taking part in treatment decisions, confidentiality of health information, complaints and appeals provision should be there always. With this, I am concluding my presentation. Thank you all for patient hearing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Suprakash, for keeping it on time. We highly appreciate that. Dr. Ajoy, we are waiting for you. If you're around, I can't see Dr. Ajoy in the list. So we are missing Dr. Ajoy. Also, there is next talk scheduled with Dr. Mahesh. Unfortunately, he's not here. But we do pray for his faster recovery and soon he'll be able to join us. Dr. Ajoy or some of his teammates are here. I would request.
Dr. Ajoy has shared his slides with me, but can you give me 2 minutes time so that I can call him and see whether he can present in the meeting? And yeah, just give me 2 minutes, okay?
Sure, no problem. Till the time.
In the meantime, I think Dr. Jayanto, we can discuss some of those points regarding this. Dr. Jayanto.
Definitely. Yes. Please go ahead.
Video. First of all, I asked to Dr. Rupak if a patient by WhatsApp or any social media assault I face after any operative procedure, what will be my first step?
See, for every city or every area, there is a the cybercrime branch is available. So first thing is that you need to report to your local police station as well as your cybercrime branch. The cybercrime branch usually associated with the district headquarters. So suppose in Calcutta, it will be associated with Lal Bazar, but like the district headquarters. So you need to approach to both, not only to cybercrime alone. So both cybercrime and the police department, they will work together and they will try to help you out. Now, during this process, you have to include your legal person as well, because you need to prove the defamation part of it. So the legal person also has to get involved. So your input, your legal person, your cybercrime department, and the local police. So this will be a multi-pronged approach.
Okay. Thank you.
So the sequence will be first is your local police station. First, FIR and GD has to be there. Second is cybercrime. Then your legal person, and you are always there, to coordinate those things.
Definitely. Okay. And what the documents I have to procure first? Suppose a phone call. Every time I don't record all the phone calls. So if I go first to police station without any documents, they will just tell, please submit some documents, some phone calls recording or some. So how is it possible a doctor to every time record all these things?
No, Dr. Jayanto, I think we are little mistaking things. So even for doing a GD or FIR, you don't need to have a document. This is a journal diary, or the first information report is whatever you are giving it. So if you are responsible for that. In future, if that GD or FIR is false, proved to be the false one, then you are liable for that. So it does not mean that you have to give the proof at that point of time. Yes, the legal person can ask you for the proof so that, you know, next time onwards you can try to record those phone calls. But initial phone calls after the first one, you don't know who is going to, you know, so it is not possible for you to record it.
Definitely.
Even for both local police and for cybercrime, you can, without your document, you can, you know, give, put your first information to them.
Okay. Thank you.
As Dr. Ajoy Pal is not picking up his phone, so and I'm having his PowerPoint presentation. So with the senior's permission, shall I read it out, or Rupakda, what is your take on this? What should I do?
Yeah. I think we have time. We have time, Dr.
Yes.
Sumana. So let us have some discussion on that point also. If you can just, you know, share that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll try to share his slides only.
That would be much better and very appreciable, Dr. Sumana. If we could share his presentation, we can go through it and we can discuss. We have 15 minutes in our hands.
Right. Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see the screen.
Okay, good. So his talk was on efficient frontier, how to protect your center from patient-related litigations. And please pardon me as I am first time going through his slides. So, with changes occurring in the societal attitude and raw consumerism, every patient and their family should be considered as a potential litigant, especially when healthcare has been declared as a service industry. So once a patient is charged a fee, even by a charitable hospital, it loses the legal immunity of being sued in the consumer court. So what does good medical practice means? It is a defensible practice depending on staying within the limits of your own expertise, keeping up to date, conducting audit, ensuring your administration is effective and does not allow the patients to slip through the net also. So what are the accountabilities of hospitals? The hospital's liability with respect to medical negligence can be direct liability or vicarious liability. Direct liability refers to the deficiency of the hospital itself in providing safe and suitable environment for treatment as promised. Vicarious liability means the liability of an employer for the negligent act of its employees. So an employer is responsible not only for his own acts of commission and omission, but also for the negligence of its employees, so long as the act occurs within the course and scope of their employment, obviously. So about the informed consent, Dr. Jayanto has already said, but just to clarify it more, it is more than just a consent. The healthcare provider must inform the patient about all the risks and complications that may reasonably occur during that procedure, however minor they may be. And the treating doctor should mention about alternative treatments available and what happens if no treatment is done. And it has to be done in the language the patient or legal guardian understands. Detailed discussion with the patient, with a witness, each from their side and the surgical team, along with the written and signed consent form is important. And with this audiovisual, the litigants cannot claim that they were coerced or forced to sign the consent form. The failure to obtain informed consent can be a form of medical negligence, as already told by Dr. Jayanto. And disclose the likely expenses, especially in case of expensive surgeries, procedures well in advance, as Dr. Suprakash was telling. And do not refuse to treat an emergency patient even if they do not have the ability to pay. Take a proper written acknowledgement from the patient in case of failure to pay fees, but that is important. So the role of documentation, maintaining medical records in the prescribed format is compulsory even in emergencies. Appropriate entries regarding investigation, diagnosis, treatment, etc. must be duly made. It is prudent to write the name of drugs in capital letters, even better if printouts are kept available. Use standard abbreviations and short forms while writing medical records. But in discharge summary, write full form. For example, it is wise to write on discharge 4 times daily rather than QDS, as we are just write like that. The medical record should include patient's complete name on each and every record. Record both the medical act performed or the advice given, as well as the purpose or reason for that particular medical act or advice. Ensure there are no inconsistencies in different medical records or at different places in the same than erasing or putting white ink. Put a circle around the inconsistent remark and write the correct one by its side and then sign, so that it doesn't show that you have manipulated with the data. Take patient's or legal guardian's signature or initials on every page of consent form or medical records. About conducting an audit, it is an integral part of the medical practice nowadays. In particular, you must take part in regular and systematic medical and clinical audit, recording data honestly. When necessary, you must respond to the results of audit to improve your practice, for example, by undertaking further training. Respond constructively to the outcome of reviews, assessments, or appraisals of your performance, and take part in confidential inquiries and adverse event recognition and reporting to help reduce risk to patients. And the role of communication. The name of the doctor will have overall responsibility for the treatment, and where appropriate, names of the senior members of his or her team has to be disclosed to the patients. A reminder that patients can change their minds about their decision at any point of time. A reminder that patients have a right to seek for a second opinion, and where applicable, details of costs or charges which the patient has to bear. So be a good listener. Not only the doctors, your support team also have to have eyes as are on the speaker. Brain is thinking about what is being said. Ears listen carefully. Mouth is quiet. Hands are still and feet are still. So the administration is not just for administrator. Unless basic systems are in place to deal with patient referral, follow-up, completion of clinical records, clinical correspondence, reviewing test results, and acting appropriately on abnormalities, all sorts of things can do and go wrong with potentially catastrophic effects for the patients. So the administration has to ensure the safety of patient and staff in all areas of hospital control, and hospital control of infection, cleanliness, sanitation, fire control, training and motivation of employees, and how to reduce the legal liability, invest time in communication, discuss risk and benefits, do not change any records, write legibly and document contemporaneously with the treatment. So to prevent the lawsuit, ensure the performance of administrative duties, establishing a legal cell in the hospital, hospital professional and general liability insurance, ensure performance of professional duty, and alternative dispute resolution policy. This alternative dispute resolution procedure consists of negotiation, reconciliation, mediation, arbitration, neutral evaluation. They're extrajudicial in character, and I think this is a very important part a hospital can play in avoiding the medical lawsuits. Hospital administrator can adopt these technologies to avoid costly and lengthy legal procedures. When complications happen, even if due to medical error, discuss the event with the patient and her family, as Dr. Jayanto has already told, explain what happened and why you believe it happened, and acknowledge how the patient and family must feel and not how you feel. And I think this is true not only for the doctors, but also for all the support staffs in the hospital. So develop good communication and rapport with patient and family, spend as much time on your contact with patient and family, and maintain a good flow of information to the patient and family. Help the family focus on what can be done to help the patient's recovery. If the complication was due to medical error, have a plan for how to quickly compensate the patient. So empathy is the power of compassion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sumana, for doing the honor. We have a question from one of the doctor, which is, should a hospital avail services of a meteorological company which claim to handle A to Z of meteorological legal cases? So shall we go ahead with this question?
Can you just repeat the question? 1 second, please.
The question is, should a hospital avail services of a medico-legal company which claims to handle A to Z of a medico-legal case?
I think I can ask Dr. Rupakanti Biswas to answer this question.
Yeah, this is possible, but again, A to Z handling by one company is may not be always possible. So because it has a different aspect, the legal aspect, the other documentation aspect. So I think a multi-sided approach will be the better option. But again, if that company is take responsibility for all support, this well, and if they have all the support, then you can go ahead. But we need to see the credential for that. I think that was the question, no, Dr. Sumana?
Yeah, I think so. And yes. I think Dr. Jayanto also has some first-hand experience.
I'm not sure whether like this kind of company exists. I think there are legal firms. There are legal firms who can handle those things. But again, only the legal plus other issues are also involved into it. Yes. So only the legal firms may not be responsible for the whole system. Dr. Right. Jayanto, would you like to comment?
Regarding the insurance companies, yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. There are two aspects. One is legal aspect and one is hospital documentation aspect. Now, in hospital part, your hospital management team will deal all these types of any documentation they have to maintain. And there are many companies who will deal legal parts. So there are so many companies, but they will not deal or they will not maintain your hospital documents properly. You have to maintain your documents properly by your own staff.
I agree fully with you, Dr. Jayanto, because this kind of crisis situation also the local.
Can I try?
Yes, Ajeda. We're looking for you. We're looking for you.
Yeah, did you get it?
Dr. Ajay, we have already been through your presentation. But we have seen your presentation. Dr. Sumana presented it for us. So
we'll love to listen from you for a few points.
Yes.
Few points. Just.
Yes.
Yeah.
Please, sir.
Just 1 second again. As this slide says, well, once the patient is charged, even with the charitable hospital, you lose that legally, but it's not necessary that way. It is a defensible practice. But as a surgeon, as a clinician, you need not feel that it's the picture is so bad. It can stay within the limits, up to date, audit, and effective. Where the accountability of the hospital is also important, the direct liability and in vicarious liability. I think everybody is aware that even if your staff does something, even my experience, I cannot say that my biometrics technician has done that wrong. So you are responsible for that. So consent is not more than consent. You have got the risk and complication, alternative treatments are available. And the informed consent is so important. I think I should say that language of the patient, it should be explained to that and the discussion witness from each side. And so failure to obtain could lead to you medical negligence. So disclose the likely expense. This is very important. That's the sole point. Many times patients file case that whatever I was told, but the package was sold 20,000. Though you have a VR, maybe a nucleus drop, you pay it from your pocket to the VR surgeons, or else if like a PPC or a very hard cataract, you can tell the patients, well, if you nucleus drops, you'll be charged 20,000 more. The report is smiling at that. Most of the time I tell that if that is so. So this has to be explained to the patient. Now, if a normal case, if you do and you charge the patient 20,000 and tell the VR surgeon, no, you can't get anything to it, that's not there. You can share it. That's my advice. Written acknowledgement, failure to pay. Documentation, again, is very important. Medical records, appropriate entries, and capital letters. Overemphasized from standard abbreviation, discharge summary, write in full form. Medical records should be patient's complete name. It should be the act performed, reason why you are performing this, no inconsistencies in different medical records, circle around inconsistent remarks. So these are the things which are taken over by the lawyers later on. See, you have written there. And patients, and again, this is the high risk concern. I think the VR surgeons would be aware.
Yes, Anata.
By the patient or the patient attendant, let them look at. I think I have got 3 minutes now. So integral part of medical practice is audit and see that can improve your practice, respond constructively to reviews, assessment, and if you're a part of a hospital management, if you're a junior there, see that whatever assessment is done, you respond to it. Communication, again, very important. The doctor should be given an option to change the doctor midway doing whenever he is getting around. So we have the right to seek second opinion. And this is what I have learned. I may not speak to the patient too much, but I have been over my 25-year practice a good listener, because that's just a small incident. One of my junior surgeon patient came to me yesterday that he is a very proficient surgeon. He's a very good surgeon. I know he came with all the reports to me. Why? The reason was the doctor didn't listen to me. And why? No, he was always busy in his computer. I mean, he was recording whatever you were talking. See, eye-to-eye contact was not there. And whatever you were saying, he was writing it down or noting it for a good one. No, I don't think he listened to me, whatever my complaint was. And so this is in this age of EMR, most of us are sitting in the computer and whatever patient we're trying to save us medically, but this is one thing which can go wrong. And administration, everything, see, administration should be there ready with the clinical backup, the clinical correspondence, acting appropriately. And the hospital should provide you safety for the patient, cleanliness, sanitation, fire control, training and motivation. So last but not the least, how to reduce risk. Invest time in communication, risk and benefit escape with the patient. Do not change the records. And you should have a legal cell. If you're a big hospital, definitely there will be a legal advisor, hospital professional, general liability insurance is definitely an alternate dispute resolution policy. This has to be there in a hospital. We have it. One of our senior Dr. Bakshi is our redressal forum. Many patients we just send. So it can be extrajudicial. You can just, if you have it, it avoids costly and lengthy legal procedures. So when the complication happens, discuss with the event, explain why you believed it happened, and acknowledge how the patient and family must feel, not how you feel. I mean, that is where it comes. Develop a good communication, rapport with the patient. Focus on what can be done. If the complication was due to medical error, have a plan to compensate the patient. So last but not the least is the empathy, the power of compassion. That will actually, we have to look within ourselves, how we can protect ourselves. Once it happens, there are many ways, but then if you do it from if the patient feels that you are with the patient, if they empathize with the patient, you can look at this legal problem with them, but in spite of that, things might come. Thank you, Shumana, for bearing with me, for bearing with my...
All right.
Thank you.
Dr. Rajesh, you all should finish by 3. I have to take over because my sessions are getting cut at 5:25.
Okay, we are over.
All right. Great. Big thank you. Dr. Ajoy, thank you so much for tuning in again. We are really appreciate your efforts. Thank you so much to Jayant Kolia and all the speakers as well for completing the session.
My sincere thanks to all my co-instructors for their active support and participation, making this instruction course fruitful. And also I thanks AIOC 2021 for their great efforts. Thank you.